Alright, today let's talk about hunger, appetite, and satiety. Starting off with hunger, which is probably the biggest reason people find that they can't keep a fasting rhythm. We've seen how going longer without food lowers insulin levels, which can actually reduce feelings of hunger after you've adjusted to fasting and after you've become fat adapted. But there's no getting around that some amount of hunger when you're trying to go without food for longer than you're used to is inevitable. We read that even Jesus, after his temptation for 40 days and nights in the wilderness, was hungry. In fact, we can speculate that he was probably starving, meaning his body was starting to run out of body fat. Most of us will never get anywhere near starvation unless we attempt an extended fast with a low body fat level to begin with. Or, like many people do, if we attempt a long-term diet that involves caloric restriction without becoming keto adapted. Starvation mode is just a long-term response to a caloric deficit, where your body's hormones start to signal that we need to conserve energy. This can lead to feelings of being constantly cold, having low energy, and, of course, being hungry. But hunger is not the same thing as starvation, and it shouldn't even be confused with appetite. Appetite is just the sum of your hormonal signals telling you when to eat and when not to eat. We can review these appetite gremlins, all these little things that mess up your appestat signaling. That is, your body's natural thermostat regulating your food intake to match your energy output. There's things like artificial light, foods that have been modified to make them easier to access, plus highly palatable foods with scientifically tested combinations of flavors and ingredients to get you hooked. Now, hunger is related to appetite, but it's not the same thing. There are multiple different kinds of hunger. Appestat-driven eating emerges from within the brain core, and it overrides conscious preferences. It's instinctive. If your appestat gets out of balance, even just a little bit, just 20 calories a day, it can still lead to obesity. There's limbic hunger, which is the drive to keep eating until you feel full again. I call this the Pringles hunger. Once you pop, you just can't stop. And it's not the same thing as the feeling of somatic hunger, which we experience as a kind of rumbling in our belly. We feel it physically. Clock hunger is when you get hungry based on habits. When you wake up in the morning, if you're used to eating breakfast, you'll be hungry. This is primarily driven by ghrelin. Ghrelin is known as the hunger hormone. In a healthy person, your hormonal signaling is carefully calibrated to balance your energy needs with your energy storage, and to deliver that energy to where it needs to go. Ghrelin is produced in the gastrointestinal tract. Obesity researchers talk about the gastric-brain communication, meaning the part of your brain, your unconscious, which is in your stomach. Ghrelin is critical in regulating balanced energy storage. It adjusts the proportion of energy going to ATP production versus fat storage, glycogen storage, and short-term heat loss. As you can see in this graph, the peak for ghrelin is a little bit after you wake up in the morning. It works like an alarm clock. Your body is actually preparing your digestive system for food. These ghrelin injections also increase your motivation to seek out food. They're highest just before meals, falling afterwards. You can turn off the ghrelin alarm clock and just ride out these waves of hunger by staying busy. You can also drink a glass of water, chew some gum, take a walk, get up from your desk to stretch, or my personal favorite, go out and bask in the sun for a few minutes. What this does is circumvent your usual habit formation circuitry by changing your response to the initial cue of hunger while giving yourself a little reward. Now on to leptin. Leptin has been referred to as the master regulator of body fat. If ghrelin is the hunger hormone, then leptin is the fullness hormone. It's a lipostatic signal, meaning a communication between your fat cells and the autonomic nervous system, specifically the forebrain, and it functions in regulating energy balance through your control of food intake. If you have enough fat stored on your body, your leptin signaling should be sufficient to let your brain know that you don't need to eat so much. This is one of these built-in automatic stabilizers for body weight, which has gotten out of whack because of all of those little pesky appetite gremlins. In a healthy person, leptin levels will rise with higher body fat, sending a signal to the thyroid to increase your body's metabolism because you have plenty of energy. It should give you feelings of satiety as well after a meal. So if you've had ice cream and birthday cake one day, you'll burn more energy the next day. Your appetite control system is going to dial up activity in response to the presence of more energy. But permanently high leptin levels desensitize the brain to that leptin signal, and it takes more just to feel full. This is called leptin resistance, the evil twin sister of insulin resistance. Your brain becomes unresponsive and thinks that there's too little leptin, when in fact there's plenty of fat stored on your body. A leptin reset can take the form of intermittent fasting, and we can resensitize all of our hunger hormones and fix our apostat without obsessively tracking our calories if this apostat is working well. If you're eating nourishing foods, you shouldn't be tracking calories all the time. By resensitizing your cells to leptin, you also regain the ability to experience the reward of food and satiety once again. Hormonal functioning is the key to bringing your apostat back into balance, and fasting is the key to restoring your hormonal functioning. Resensitizing our hormones and fixing our apostat is a process that usually takes months, mostly by changing the composition of your diet. However, by incorporating time-restricted eating and fasting, you can accelerate this process and get it done in a matter of weeks.